The moment my daughter told me I was no longer welcome in her family, her husband smiled. That smile told me more than her words ever could. I looked at the two of them across the dinner table, and for the first time in my life, I realized they had made one terrible mistake. They thought they had finally broken me. They had no idea I had already decided what I was going to do next. My name is Elliot Hayes. I'm 68 years old, and I've spent most of my life being the kind of man people describe with one word. Quiet. Not timid. Not weak. Quiet. There's a difference. And people who mistake silence for surrender usually understand that difference far too late. It was Father's Day, and the Georgia heat had settled over the neighborhood like a heavy blanket. I had driven to my daughter Lauren's house carrying a small gift I'd picked out weeks earlier. A leather-bound journal. She used to love writing. Before marriage, before expensive houses, before her husband Grant slowly became the loudest voice in her life. Lauren opened the door with a smile. Dad. She hugged me, but something about it felt rehearsed. Grant appeared behind her moments later. Good to see you, Elliot. His handshake was firm. Too firm. I noticed. I always noticed. Dinner started peacefully enough. Lauren had prepared one of my favorite meals, and for nearly half an hour, I allowed myself to believe the evening might actually be normal. Then Grant leaned back in his chair. So, Elliot, he said, I don't know if Lauren mentioned it, but we're almost finished securing the biggest development contract we've ever chased. Lauren immediately looked proud. How big? I asked. Grant smiled. Big enough to change everything. He began describing a massive commercial project outside Alpharetta. Millions of dollars were involved, influential people were involved, and Grant clearly believed he was about to enter another league. I listened. Then he mentioned the development board. And that's when I stopped eating. Because 3 weeks earlier, an old colleague had called me. His name was Martin Cole. Martin had congratulated me on becoming a strategic advisor for Grant's company. I had laughed because I thought he was joking. I wasn't an advisor. I had never agreed to anything, and yet my professional name had appeared inside Grant's project documents. My reputation. 35 years of it. The reputation I'd built by keeping promises, telling uncomfortable truths, and never attaching my name to something I couldn't defend. Grant had apparently decided he could borrow all of that without asking. I reached into my jacket. Lauren noticed. Dad, what's that? I placed a folded document on the table. Grant's smile disappeared. I turned the pages toward him. There it was. My name. Listed as a professional advisor. I looked directly at my son-in-law. Grant, I want my name removed from every document you've submitted. His jaw tightened. Lauren looked confused. What are you talking about? Grant suddenly became defensive. Then strangely, he stopped arguing with me. Instead, he looked at Lauren. And I watched him change tactics. Lauren, he said softly, your father is trying to destroy the biggest opportunity we've ever had. My daughter turned toward me. Dad, how could you do this to us? I stared at her. I wanted to explain everything. I wanted my little girl to remember the father who had stayed beside her through every difficult year of her childhood. But Grant was watching me, waiting for me to fold. Lauren's voice rose. If you don't support my husband, then maybe you shouldn't be part of this family. The room went silent. I looked at my daughter for several seconds. Then I stood. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I simply picked up my jacket. And before walking out, I gave her 5 quiet words. You're going to regret this. They thought that was a threat. It wasn't. It was a warning. Because when I got home that evening, I didn't call Lauren. I didn't call Grant. I didn't send an angry message. I sat alone at my kitchen table and looked at the clock. Then I opened the drawer beside me. Inside was a phone number I hadn't needed in years. A number belonging to the one man who could make Grant's entire project stop before it ever reached the finish line. I picked up the phone. And this time, I wasn't calling as a father. I was calling as the man whose name Grant had stolen. And what happened after that call would leave my daughter questioning everything she believed about her husband. I kept the phone in my hand for almost a minute before I finally pressed call. There are certain people you don't contact unless something has gone seriously wrong. Harold Mercer was one of those people. He was 72, chairman of the Regional Development Board, and someone I'd known for more than 30 years. We'd worked on zoning committees together. We'd sat across conference tables arguing about projects worth millions. He had attended my retirement dinner. More importantly, Harold knew exactly what my name was worth. The phone rang twice. Elliot? His voice immediately softened. Didn't expect to hear from you. Harold, I need you to listen carefully. The warmth disappeared from his voice. All right. I told him everything. No anger. No insults. No exaggeration. I explained that my name had been placed on Grant's development proposal without my knowledge or permission. I told him I had no role in the company, no advisory position, and no professional relationship with the project. Then I said something that mattered more than everything else. Harold, I don't want Grant punished because he's my daughter's husband. I don't want revenge. I want my name back. There was silence. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind that happens when someone realizes a situation is much more serious than they first imagined. Finally, Harold asked, "Are you willing to put this in writing?" "Yes." "How quickly?" "Before noon." He exhaled. "Elliot, if your name was used without authorization on an official submission, we have to investigate." "I understand. And if the information you're giving me is accurate, the board can't simply ignore it." "I know." Another pause. Then Harold said something I'll never forget. "You should have called me sooner." I closed my eyes. Maybe. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for several minutes. I should have felt powerful. I didn't. I felt tired. Because suddenly the whole thing wasn't about Grant anymore. It was about Lauren, my daughter. The little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms because she believed her father could keep lightning away. The teenager who called me from college at 2 in the morning because she was homesick. The woman I had spent years trying to protect from disappointment. And now she had looked me in the eyes and told me I didn't belong in her family. I rubbed my face and whispered, "When did we become strangers?" I didn't have an answer. By 11 that morning, I had delivered my signed statement to Harold's office. Then I went home. I didn't call anyone. I didn't contact Grant's business partners. I didn't threaten him. I didn't even tell Lauren what I'd done. I simply waited. And waiting turned out to be the hardest part. Because sometimes you can tell the truth and still have to watch someone you love walk straight toward the consequences. The first sign came the next afternoon. My old friend Martin called. "Elliot, have you heard anything?" "About what?" There was a pause. The development board suspended Grant's proposal. I stared through the kitchen window. "Why?" Martin gave a humorless laugh. "Don't make me say it." My stomach tightened. "Martin, they found a problem with the professional references." I said nothing. "The board is reviewing the entire submission now." I looked down at my hands. I hadn't expected the process to move that quickly. Martin lowered his voice. "Elliot, this isn't just a delay. They're treating it as an ethics issue." I thanked him and hung up. For the rest of the afternoon, I tried to convince myself that this was the end of it. It wasn't. By Wednesday morning, Grant's world had started shrinking. One business contact stopped returning his calls. Then another. A meeting disappeared from his calendar. A potential investor suddenly needed more time. And then his company received the formal notice. The project was frozen pending investigation. That was when my phone finally rang. Grant. I watched his name flash across the screen. I didn't answer. The call ended. 30 seconds later, he called again. I let it ring. Then came a message. "Elliot, we need to talk. This has gone way too far." I read it twice. Way too far. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I made a mistake." Not even, "I shouldn't have used your name." He was worried about how far the consequences had gone. I placed the phone face down. Then another call appeared. "Lauren." My heart immediately sank. I wanted to answer. Every instinct inside me screamed to answer. But I remembered her words. "Maybe you shouldn't be part of this family." So I let it ring. The second time, I almost reached for it. Then I stopped. For the first time in 29 years, I was going to let my daughter experience a problem without rushing in to rescue her. And I had no idea how much that decision was about to hurt. Because that evening, Lauren discovered something about Grant that changed the entire story. Something I didn't know yet. Something that would eventually bring her to my front door. And when she finally arrived, she wouldn't be coming to defend her husband. She would be coming to ask me a question that I had been afraid to hear for years. "Dad, how did you know?" By Wednesday morning, I still hadn't answered Lauren's calls. Not because I didn't love her. That was the problem. I loved her enough to know that if I answered too soon, I would probably do what I'd always done. Fix it. Explain it. Protect her from the consequences. For 29 years, that had been my instinct. But this time, something had changed. I wasn't going to carry the weight for her anymore. At 7:40 that morning, Martin called again. His voice sounded different. "Elliot, are you sitting down?" I looked at the empty chair across from me. I'm sitting. There's more. My stomach tightened. What happened? The board sent Grant a formal notice yesterday. They aren't just questioning the reference. I waited. They're reviewing the entire proposal. I leaned back slowly. Why? Martin hesitated. Because your name wasn't the only thing that raised questions. That caught my attention. What else did they find? I don't know all of it, but apparently some of the information Grant submitted doesn't line up with what the board can verify. I closed my eyes. For the first time, I wondered whether using my name had been only one piece of a much bigger problem. Martin, are you telling me Grant fabricated other information? I'm telling you that people are looking very closely now. That was enough. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I sat there thinking about Lauren. How many things had she never told me? How many times had she defended Grant, because admitting something was wrong would mean admitting she'd made the wrong choice? I knew that feeling. I'd made mistakes too. The difference was that I'd spent my life trying to correct mine. Grant seemed determined to bury his. At 9:16, my phone rang again. Lauren. I watched it vibrate across the counter. This time I answered. Dad. Her voice was barely recognizable. Lauren. There was silence. Then she whispered, Are you okay? I almost laughed. She was asking if I was okay, after telling me I wasn't welcome in her family. I'm fine. Dad, I need to talk to you. About what? She didn't answer. I heard her breathing. Then she said, About Grant. I straightened. What about him? He lied to me. Those 4 words hit harder than I expected. I didn't say anything. Lauren continued. Yesterday, he told me the board was trying to sabotage him. He said you had called people and ruined everything. I made one call. I know. My heart stopped for a moment. What? I know what you told them. I stared at the wall. How? The board sent him a notice. I saw it. Her voice cracked. And Dad, your name was on the document. I swallowed. Yes. I thought you were trying to hurt him. I wasn't. I know that now. That sentence hurt more than it should have. Because I wanted her to have known it then. I wanted my daughter to trust me before the evidence forced her to. Lauren, I said quietly, I never wanted your marriage to fail. She started crying. I think it already did. I closed my eyes. There are moments when a father hears his daughter's heartbreak and feels completely helpless. This was one of them. Where are you? At home. Is Grant there? No. Something about the way she said it made me uneasy. Did he hurt you? No. She paused. Not physically. I sat up. Lauren. I'm okay, Dad. Tell me what happened. She took a shaky breath. Last night, he was on the phone for hours. He kept saying people were turning against him. He blamed you. He blamed the board. He blamed everyone except himself. I listened. Then I asked him a question. What question? I asked him why your name was on the proposal. Silence. What did he say? He said it was just a business strategy. My jaw tightened. Then I asked him whether you knew. Lauren's voice became smaller. And that's when he got angry. I didn't interrupt. He said your name opened doors. He said people trusted you. He said the board respected you. I stared at the floor. There it was. The truth. Not an accident. Not confusion. Not some innocent administrative mistake. He had deliberately used the one thing I'd spent decades protecting. My reputation. Lauren continued. Then I asked him whether there were other things he hadn't told me. My heart sank. And? He wouldn't answer. What did he do? He walked into his office and locked the door. Lauren began crying again. Dad, I waited outside for almost 20 minutes. I said nothing. Then I heard him talking to someone. Who? I don't know. What did he say? She hesitated. Then she whispered, he said, if Elliot talks, we're finished. Everything inside me went still. Not because I was surprised. Because I suddenly understood something. Grant wasn't afraid of losing a contract anymore. He was afraid of what I knew. And the worst part was, I didn't know what he thought I knew. That evening, Lauren called me again. This time she wasn't crying. She sounded terrified. Dad, I found something. What? I went into Grant's office after he left. I stood from my chair. Lauren, what did you find? Her breathing became unsteady. There's a folder here. What kind of folder? I don't know. Lauren. She lowered her voice. Your name is written on it. My blood ran cold. Don't open it. Why? Because if Grant put your name on one document without telling you, we don't know what else he may have done. She went quiet. Then I heard paper moving. Lauren, stop. Dad. Her voice changed. What? She whispered 3 words. And those 3 words made my entire body go cold. It's about you. Then the line went dead. For nearly 10 seconds, I stared at my phone after the call ended. Lauren? Nothing. I called back. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. A cold feeling settled in my chest. I wanted to drive straight to her house, but something stopped me. Fear. Not fear of Grant. Fear of what my daughter might have discovered. I grabbed my keys anyway. Then my phone rang. Lauren. I answered immediately. Where are you? She was breathing hard. Dad, I'm still here. Are you alone? Yes. Did Grant come back? No. I lowered my voice. Then tell me what you found. For several seconds, she didn't speak. Then she said, there are copies of emails in this folder. Emails about what? You. My stomach tightened. What do they say? I don't know how to explain it. Lauren, try. She sniffed. Grant had been talking to someone months before the development proposal was submitted. Who? I don't know. The name is Victor Hale. I repeated it quietly. Victor Hale. The name meant nothing to me. Then Lauren said something that made my blood run cold. He was asking Grant questions about you. I sat down. What kind of questions? Your professional history. People you still knew. Your connections to the development board. Whether you'd retired completely. I stared at the kitchen wall. This wasn't spontaneous. Grant had been planning something. For months. Lauren, keep reading. She hesitated. There are messages where Grant says your reputation is the only thing he needs. My eyes closed. The betrayal suddenly felt different. It wasn't just that my son-in-law had used my name. He had studied me. He had studied the relationships I'd spent decades building and figured out how they could benefit him. Dad, I'm here. There's another page. What does it say? Her voice cracked. It says if you refuse to cooperate, they have another way to make your name useful. My entire body went still. What does that mean? I don't know. Lauren, don't touch anything else. But Dad, listen to me. Put everything back exactly where you found it. She went quiet. Then she whispered, I'm scared. Those 2 words broke something inside me. Because suddenly I wasn't hearing the confident woman who had ordered me out of her family 3 nights earlier. I was hearing the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The child who believed that when she was afraid, her father would make everything right. And the hardest thing I had ever learned was that sometimes loving your child means admitting you cannot make everything right for them. Lauren, I said softly, you're going to be okay. Are you sure? No. She went silent. I took a breath. But I'm not going to lie to you. That was the promise I should have made years ago. Not that I'd always protect her from pain, but that I'd always tell her the truth. Then I heard a sound through the phone. A door closing. Lauren gasped. Dad. What happened? Someone's here. My heart slammed against my ribs. Get out of the house. I can't. My keys are upstairs. Lauren, listen to me. Go outside through the back door. I think it's Grant. Don't confront him. Then I heard a man's voice in the distance. Lauren covered the phone. I could barely hear her whisper. Dad, he knows I found it. The line went silent again. I stood there holding the phone, completely helpless. Then a message appeared. Not from Lauren. From Grant. Just 6 words. You should have stayed out of this. I read it twice. And suddenly, the anger I'd been suppressing for years disappeared. Because Grant had just made one mistake. He'd stopped pretending. And now I knew this was bigger than a stolen signature, a failed contract, or a family argument. Someone had been planning this long before Father's Day. And if Grant was willing to threaten me now, I had to find out what was inside that folder before he could destroy it. But there was one problem. When I finally learned who Victor Hale was, I realized Grant wasn't the man pulling the strings. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid of Grant. I was afraid of what I might discover about my own daughter. At 6:15 the next morning, Lauren finally called. The first thing I heard was her breathing. Dad, I'm here. I didn't tell Grant everything. My chest tightened. What didn't you tell him? I took pictures of the folder. I stood from the kitchen table. Lauren, where are you? I'm at a hotel. Relief hit me so hard I had to sit back down. Are you hurt? No. Are you sure? Yes. Then her voice dropped. But Dad, I think Grant knows more about you than you realize. I closed my eyes. Tell me. She sent the photographs. I opened the first one. Then the second. The documents showed dates going back almost 8 months. Grant had been communicating with a man named Victor Hale, a private consultant who specialized in helping developers secure high-value projects. But that wasn't the part that frightened me. Victor had been asking questions about my retirement, my old clients, my relationships with board members, and strangely my financial situation. I stared at the screen. Lauren, why would they need this? I don't know. Then she sent another photograph. This one showed an email from Grant to Victor. I read it twice. Grant had written that if he could get my name attached to the project, the board would assume I had already vetted the company. But underneath, that was something even worse. He said that if I refused to cooperate, Victor could create enough noise around Elliot's old business dealings to make him nervous. I stopped breathing for a moment. Old business dealings. There weren't any secrets. At least, none that I knew about. I called Harold immediately. He answered on the first ring. Elliot? Harold, have you ever heard of Victor Hale? The silence lasted just long enough to worry me. Yes. My stomach dropped. How? He's been around development circles for years. Why? Because he's been asking questions about me. Harold's voice changed. Elliot, what exactly did you find? I told him. When I finished, he said something that made my hands go cold. There's a possibility this isn't about your reputation. What do you mean? Your name may have been useful for another reason. What reason? Harold hesitated. Do you remember the Riverside acquisition from years ago? I froze. Of course I remembered. It had been one of the biggest projects of my career. A property acquisition that nearly collapsed after several investors attempted to manipulate the zoning process. I'd walked away from the deal when I discovered irregularities. But there was one thing I had never told Lauren. One thing I'd buried because I thought it belonged to the past. Harold, I whispered, what does Riverside have to do with Grant? I don't know yet. Then find out. I already started. I looked toward the window. The morning sun was coming through the blinds, but my kitchen suddenly felt cold. Then Harold said, there's something else. What? Victor Hale wasn't working alone. My grip tightened around the phone. Who was with him? Harold didn't answer immediately. Then he gave me a name I hadn't heard in more than 20 years. Daniel Hayes. I stopped moving. My younger brother. Dead for nearly 15 years. That's impossible, I whispered. I know what you're thinking. No, Harold. You don't understand. Daniel hadn't been involved in my business. Not officially. And he certainly couldn't have been working with Victor. Unless. I looked again at the photographs Lauren had sent. Then I noticed something I had missed. At the bottom of the final page was a handwritten note. 3 words. Ask your daughter. My blood ran cold. I called Lauren. She answered immediately. Dad. Lauren, I need you to tell me something. What? Did Grant ever mention my brother? Silence. Longer than it should have been. Then Lauren whispered. Dad. Her voice broke. Grant didn't mention him. I waited. I did. And suddenly, I realized the mystery wasn't about what Grant had done to me. It was about what my own daughter had known before she ever sat down at that Father's Day dinner. And she had been keeping it from me. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. My daughter had just admitted that she knew my brother's name was connected to the people investigating me. And somehow, that hurt more than anything Grant had done. Lauren, I finally said, what did you know? I didn't know everything. That isn't what I asked. Her breathing became shaky. Dad, please. 29 years, Lauren. I've spent my entire life telling you the truth. I need you to give me the same thing now. She started crying. And for one terrible second, I wanted to take it back. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter. But that was the old me talking. The man who confused protecting his daughter with protecting her from every uncomfortable truth. So I stayed silent. Finally, Lauren said, Grant found some old documents about Uncle Daniel. I sat down. Where? In his office. What kind of documents? I don't know. Financial records. Old property records. Some letters. My heart began pounding. Why were they in Grant's office? I asked him that. And he said Daniel had been involved with people connected to Riverside. I stared at the floor. My brother had always been the reckless one. Daniel could charm anyone. He could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 3 new friends. But he had made mistakes. Serious ones. Years before his death, I discovered he had gotten involved with a group of investors who wanted to manipulate a commercial property transaction. When I found out, I cut him out of the business side completely. We fought. Badly. The last conversation we ever had ended with Daniel telling me I cared more about my reputation than my own family. 2 months later, he died in a highway accident. I'd spent 15 years wondering whether those were the last words he'd ever wanted me to hear. Now Lauren was telling me his name had somehow resurfaced. Did Grant know Daniel personally? No. Then how did he get those records? I don't know. Lauren. She went quiet. Then she whispered, Victor gave them to him. My entire body stiffened. Victor Hale? Yes. Why? I think he wanted Grant to pressure you. Pressure me into what? She didn't answer. Lauren. Signing something. What? I don't know. I stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the neighborhood looked perfectly normal. A lawn mower running down the street. A dog barking somewhere nearby. A delivery truck passing my house. Normal. But my life no longer was. Lauren, where are you now? Still at the hotel. Stay there. Dad. Please. She went quiet. Then I heard her say, I was scared. I closed my eyes. I know. No, Dad. You don't. Her voice broke. I was scared because Grant told me something before we got married. I turned around. What? He said your brother had stolen money from one of your old clients. My stomach dropped. That's a lie. I know that now. Why didn't you tell me? Because I believed him. That sentence cut deeper than she realized. Not because she had believed Grant. Because she had believed him about me. Lauren, did you ever think I was capable of something like that? No. She answered so quickly that I almost believed the question had offended her. Then she whispered, but I thought maybe there was something you weren't telling me. I sat down again. For years, Lauren had carried a version of me that wasn't real. And Grant had apparently built his entire relationship with her around that uncertainty. Dad, she said, I think Grant married me because of you. I couldn't answer. She continued. He knew your name. He knew your connections. He knew about Riverside before I even knew the story existed. My hands tightened. Did he ever ask you about my old clients? Yes. How often? After we got engaged. Everything suddenly clicked. The questions. The documents. The stolen reference. Victor. Riverside. Daniel. Grant hadn't discovered my reputation recently. He'd been studying it from the beginning. I looked at the photographs again. Then I noticed something strange in one of them. A date. September 14th, 2024. I remembered that date. It was the day Lauren had introduced Grant to me. The first time I ever shook his hand. My blood ran cold. Lauren. Yes. When did Grant first meet you? She hesitated. September. September 14th? Silence. Lauren. Yes. I stared at the photograph. Grant had been asking questions about me before I even knew he existed. That meant our first meeting hadn't been an accident. And neither had their marriage. Dad, Lauren whispered. What are you thinking? I looked at her photograph on my phone. My little girl. The child I'd spent decades protecting. The woman who had unknowingly brought a stranger into our family. I think your husband knew exactly who I was before he ever fell in love with you. Lauren began sobbing. And this time, I couldn't comfort her with an easy answer. Because there was one question neither of us had asked yet. Why would a man spend years getting close to my daughter just to reach me? Then my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered. Nobody spoke. Hello. Silence. Then a man's voice finally came through. Low. Calm. Almost amused. Mr. Hayes, you should stop asking questions about Riverside. My blood turned cold. Who is this? The man chuckled softly. You already know. The call ended. I stared at the phone. Lauren heard everything. Dad. I didn't answer. Because I finally understood. Grant wasn't the person I needed to fear. Victor wasn't either. Someone else had been watching this entire situation from the beginning. And whoever that person was, they knew exactly what happened to my brother 15 years ago. I didn't tell Lauren what I was thinking. Not yet. Because if that phone call was what I suspected it was, then we weren't dealing with a simple business scandal anymore. We were dealing with something that had been buried for 15 years. And somebody was terrified that I might dig it up. I called Harold. He answered immediately. Elliot? Someone just called me. His voice sharpened. Who? I don't know. He mentioned Riverside. Silence. Then Harold said, What exactly did he say? I repeated the words. Stop asking questions about Riverside. Harold didn't speak for several seconds. Elliot, listen carefully. Don't contact anyone connected to that transaction. Why? Because I found something. My heart began pounding. What? Meet me. Where? Not your house. I looked toward Lauren. She was sitting across from me, watching my face. Why not? Because if someone is monitoring you, the last thing we need is a predictable location. I felt a chill move through me. Harold, what did you find? His voice dropped. Records from the original Riverside investigation. My fingers tightened around the phone. Those records were sealed. Some were. And the others? Someone removed several pages from the file. I froze. Who? That's what I don't know. I hung up 20 minutes later. Lauren was still sitting there. Dad, what is it? I looked at my daughter. There was fear in her eyes. But underneath it was something else. Regret. Your Uncle Daniel wasn't the only person involved in Riverside. She swallowed. Who else? I don't know yet. She looked down. Then she said something I never expected. Dad, I think I do. My heart stopped. What? Lauren reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She opened one of the photographs from Grant's office. Then she zoomed in. Look at the signature. I stared at it. At first, I saw nothing. Then I recognized the initials. My stomach dropped. No. Lauren looked at me. What? I took the phone from her. The signature belonged to a man I'd known for years. A man I'd trusted. A man who had attended my retirement dinner. A man who had stood beside me after Daniel died. Harold Mercer. I stared at the name. My mind refused to accept it. That's impossible. Lauren whispered, Dad. No. I stood. Harold wasn't involved. But his signature is there. Someone could have forged it. Then why would they? I had no answer. And that was when I noticed another detail. The date. It was 15 years old. The same year Daniel died. My chest tightened. I remembered the funeral. Harold standing beside me. His hand on my shoulder. Telling me that Daniel's death wasn't my fault. Telling me to let the past go. I'd trusted him. For 15 years. I called him. No answer. I called again. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. A text. From Harold. Come alone. I stared at it. Lauren saw my expression. Dad. I showed her the message. Her face went pale. Don't go. I have to. No. She grabbed my arm. Dad, please. What if he's the person behind all of this? I looked at her hand around my sleeve. Then I looked at her face. 29 years old. Still my little girl somehow. And suddenly I realized what mattered more than Riverside. More than Grant. More than Harold. Her. I sat beside her. You remember what you asked me years ago? She frowned. What? After your mother and I divorced. She looked away. You asked whether families could break permanently. Her eyes filled. You told me they couldn't. I was wrong. She looked at me. Families can break. Her lips trembled. But they can also rebuild. I put my hand over hers. And that's what we're going to do. She began crying. This time I let her. I didn't tell her everything would be fine. Because I couldn't promise that. Instead, I told her the one thing I could promise. I won't leave you alone in this. Lauren wiped her face. Then I'm coming with you. No. Dad. I'm serious. She shook her head. You spent my whole life protecting me. Maybe it's time I protect you. That sentence nearly broke me. Because those were the exact words I'd once wanted to hear. Not from the frightened little girl she'd been. From the woman she'd finally become. So I agreed. We drove to the meeting place together. An old diner near the edge of town. Harold had chosen a booth in the back. When we walked inside, he was already there. He looked older than he had 2 days earlier. Tired. Almost frightened. Lauren stayed beside me. I sat across from him. Tell me the truth. Harold looked at me, then at Lauren. And for several seconds, he couldn't speak. Finally, he whispered. Daniel didn't die because of Riverside. My entire body went numb. What did you say? Harold lowered his eyes. Your brother discovered something. Something about who? You. I stared at him. Lauren grabbed my hand beneath the table. Harold continued. Daniel discovered that someone had been moving money through shell companies connected to the Riverside acquisition. He tried to expose it. Who? Harold's face tightened. Grant's father. I couldn't breathe. Grant's father. A man I'd met only once. A man who had died years ago. Harold leaned forward. Daniel planned to give me the evidence. Then what happened? His eyes filled with regret. Daniel never made it. The diner seemed to disappear around me. 15 years. 15 years I'd believed my brother died in an accident. Harold looked at me. It wasn't an accident. Lauren gasped. I couldn't move. Then why didn't you tell me? Harold's voice cracked. Because I was threatened. By whom? He looked toward the window, then back at me. Victor Hale. My heart sank. Victor was there? No. Harold swallowed. Victor was the man who cleaned up what happened afterward. I felt something inside me collapse. And Grant? Harold didn't answer. That silence was enough. Lauren whispered, "Dad." I looked at Harold. "Tell me everything." He reached inside his coat and pulled out a small envelope. He placed it on the table. "This is the last thing Daniel ever sent me." I stared at it. My brother's handwriting was visible on the front. My hands began trembling. I hadn't seen that handwriting in 15 years. I slowly reached for the envelope. But before I could open it, my phone buzzed. One message. Unknown number. I opened it. There was only one sentence. "If you open that envelope, Elliot, your daughter will learn what you did to Daniel." I stopped breathing. Lauren looked at me. "Dad." And for the first time in 15 years, I wondered whether my brother's death had been hiding a secret about me. A secret even my daughter was about to discover. Because the truth inside that envelope wasn't going to destroy Grant. It was going to destroy the version of her father Lauren had believed in her entire life. I stared at the message on my phone. "If you open that envelope, Elliot, your daughter will learn what you did to Daniel." Lauren was sitting beside me. She had seen my face change. "Dad," she whispered, "what did you do?" For 15 years, I'd carried the memory of my brother's death like a stone buried beneath my ribs. But the truth was, I hadn't killed Daniel. I hadn't betrayed him. I'd done something far more painful. I'd abandoned him when he needed me. I looked at Lauren. "Your uncle found the Riverside records before I did." Harold lowered his head. "Daniel discovered that Grant's father and several investors were moving money through companies connected to the project. He wanted to expose them. Then why didn't he?" Lauren asked. "Because I stopped him," I said. Her eyes widened. "Why?" "Because I thought he was making accusations he couldn't prove." I swallowed. I told him to stay away from it. I told him he'd destroy his own life trying to fight people with more money and influence than him. Lauren stared at me. "And he died?" "Yes." The word barely came out. But before he died, Daniel sent Harold the evidence. I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. My brother's handwriting. The first line nearly broke me. "Elliot, if you're reading this, I was right." I couldn't continue. Lauren gently touched my arm. "Dad, read it." So I did. Daniel had written that he discovered Grant's father was connected to a network of shell companies involved in the Riverside deal. He had also discovered that someone inside the development board had been helping conceal the transactions. That person was Harold. But Harold hadn't done it for money. He'd been threatened. And after Daniel died, Harold had hidden the evidence because Victor Hale threatened to destroy his family. The accident had been staged to look ordinary. Daniel had been trying to deliver the documents when he was forced off the road. I lowered the letter. Lauren was crying. "So Grant knew?" "Not at first," Harold said. "But Victor eventually found him. Grant wanted access to the same network his father had built. That's why he came after your name, Elliot." Everything finally made sense. Grant hadn't married Lauren simply because he loved her. He had seen her as a doorway. And my reputation was the key. I looked at Lauren. There was shame in her eyes. "I brought him into your life," she whispered. "No, Dad. You made a choice. You didn't know what he was. But you knew something was wrong. I knew enough to ask questions. I didn't know enough to save you." Her tears fell. For years, I'd believed being a father meant protecting my daughter from every storm. Now I understood something different. Sometimes being a father means standing beside her while she walks through the storm herself. Lauren reached for my hand. "I told you that you weren't welcome in my family." I squeezed her fingers. "I remember. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself." "You don't need to punish yourself forever." She looked at me. "Can you forgive me?" My throat tightened. "You're my daughter." That was my answer. Not because what she did didn't hurt. It did. It hurt more deeply than anything Grant had done. But love isn't pretending someone didn't hurt you. Love is deciding their worst moment doesn't have to become the final chapter of your relationship. 3 weeks later, the investigation into Grant's company became public. The development contract disappeared. Victor Hale was investigated. The old Riverside evidence was reopened. And Grant finally admitted that my name had been used without permission. He called me once. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I had finally learned the difference between forgiveness and access. I could forgive him someday. But he would never again have access to my trust. Lauren moved out of that house. She came home for dinner one Sunday. Just me and her. No Grant. No arguments. No performance. She brought the leather journal I'd given her on Father's Day. She placed it on the table. I started writing again, she said. I smiled. Good. She opened it to the first page. There was one sentence. My father was quiet because he was strong enough not to become cruel. I looked away for a moment. Because sometimes the deepest wounds aren't healed by winning. They're healed when the person you almost lost finally comes home. Lauren reached across the table. Dad. Yeah. I'm glad you didn't chase me when I told you to leave. I looked at her. Why? Because if you had, I might never have learned how much I needed to find my way back myself. I squeezed her hand, and for the first time in a long time, the silence between us didn't feel like distance. It felt like peace. I had spent years believing that my greatest responsibility was protecting my daughter. Now I understood. It was teaching her that love can have boundaries, that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and that sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't surrendering. He's simply waiting until the truth has nowhere left to hide. If this story touched you, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And remember this, never mistake someone's patience for weakness. Because one day, the person you've pushed too far may finally stop explaining themselves. And when they do, the truth can speak louder than revenge ever could.